I look like crap. What's new though? Oh, before I get into this video, I just want to quickly apologize if my energy seems low or I seem like I just don't want to be making this video. I do. I just feel awful. I have that feeling like right before you get the flu, like my head hurts, my sinuses hurt, my throat hurts. I overall just don't feel good. But I really wanted to make this video because I knew that if I waited till I got really sick, I was not gonna do it, and then I was gonna put it off for like a month because that's just how I am. So I'm gonna stop talking now and get into the actual video. For those of you who don't know, I do have a 2-year-old daughter, so I know that I'm kind of late in the game on making this video. I actually already did make a labor and delivery story video, but it was 2 years ago. It was really crappy. It was on a crappy camera. My TV was on in the background. It was really loud. I looked like crap. Not that I look any better this time, but still. I decided that since I've restarted my channel completely and I've gained so many new subscribers and so many of the people who are now subscribed to me don't know about that, that I would just redo this video entirely. So with all that being said, let's actually get into the video. So this story starts on February 12th around like 9 o'clock in the morning. I had woken up pretty early that morning, and pretty much right after waking up, I got dressed, ready, and I went to my daughter's dad's house to spend the day with him. So after like 10 minutes of arriving at his house, I started to feel like really small, not really painful cramps, and I didn't really think too much of it because, you know, I was like 9 months pregnant. I was huge. I cramped all the time, so I really just didn't pay that much attention to it, but I did notice it. They had been like that for a while and I wasn't really paying attention to them, and then after a few hours had went by, they did start to get a little bit more painful and a little bit more noticeable. And so after like 30 minutes of them starting to actually hurt, I opened the notes on my phone, and every time I got one, I put the time I had that contraction down into my notes. After like an hour of doing that, I had noticed that they were all 5 to 7 minutes apart. So I texted my mom and I told her, and she told me that I should probably just come home, drink water, and lay down and relax. And I was like, okay, whatever, that's fine. So my mom came and got me. I went home. I laid down. The cramps didn't really go away, but they weren't getting worse. It comes time for me to go to sleep, and I'm laying in bed, and my contractions aren't getting any closer together, but they were getting more uncomfortable. They were hurting a lot more. I couldn't really sit still through them. And I was talking to my mom about it, and at this point, I had been to the hospital so many times thinking that I was going in labor and didn't, and I was just really fed up with going to the hospital and being sent home. So my mom was sitting there trying to convince me, this was about 10 o'clock at night, to convince me that we should go in, and I was like completely in denial. I really did not want to go in. I had an appointment the next day with my OB, so I was like, I can just wait it out till then. I'll be fine. I'll drink water. I'll curl up in a ball and I'll just go to sleep. And she was just like, are you sure? Like, whatever. And then it kept hurting more and more, and she just convinced me, like, let's go in. So by the time that I finally agreed to go into the hospital, my mom was telling me to grab my bags, and I didn't even want to grab my bags. I was like, no, we're gonna get sent home. We're not having a baby tonight. It's fine. No, grab my bags anyways, put them in the truck, and we drove to the hospital. On the way to the hospital, my contractions were not getting any worse. They were still really uncomfortable, couldn't really sit still. I was not having a great time. So around 10:45, I got to the hospital. By 11, I was checked in, and I was in triage in labor and delivery. Right when I got to labor and delivery, they immediately put me on monitors to monitor my contractions. I was most definitely having contractions. They were definitely showing up on the paper that comes out of the monitor. Don't know what it's called, don't really care, you know what I'm talking about. After they had hooked me up to everything and monitored my contractions for a little bit, they checked to see how dilated I was, and I was 4 centimeters dilated. I had been 4 centimeters dilated for the past 2 months prior to that, so they wanted to see if I would progress any more. So they told me to get up and go walk around the hospital for 2 hours, so from 11 to 1 is when they wanted me to come back. I said okay, got up. I was able to walk around the hospital. My contractions hurt. They were uncomfortable, but I wasn't like dying yet. Okay, yet. After about an hour of walking around the hospital with my mom, I was in so much pain. I couldn't stand up. I was sitting there crying and just, I couldn't handle it anymore. I was like, nope, can't make the 2 hours. I need to go back. I need an epidural. So me and my mom, we went back to labor and delivery. I told them I can't walk anymore, that I'm in too much pain. They say, okay. They lay me down on the table, and technically they're not supposed to admit you till you're 6 centimeters dilated. They checked me, I was 5 centimeters dilated, but because I did progress, they decided to admit me, and because I was in so much pain. I had been laying there in triage waiting for things to like get moving for like 10 minutes, and then my contractions were just so unbearable that I could not sit down. I had on a gown, my ass was out. It was just, it was a mess. I was a mess. I was standing up crying. I told them I couldn't do it anymore, that I needed an epidural, and they just kept BSing around and like being like, okay, well, you just have to wait because we have to get your consent forms, because at the time I was 16. I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but at least at my hospital and where I live, I was not old enough to consent to getting my own epidural. So the doctors had to go get consent forms so my mom could sign them. While they were finding the consent forms, they were making me put on the grippy socks that they make you wear when you go into labor. They were making me put on 2 hospital gowns, and they pushed me into my own room where I would then deliver my daughter. After getting moved into my own room, they checked my vitals, all of that, and then they told me that the anesthesiologist would be in soon to get me my epidural. Now again, I don't know if it's just the hospital that I had my daughter at and where I live, but I was not allowed to have anybody in the room with me while I got my epidural because it was considered a sterile environment. So once the anesthesiologist came in, they said that my mom had to leave. I was in there by myself. I was 16. I was in so much pain. I was scared out of my mind. So I'm sitting there and I'm just asking the nurse like a million questions, and I'm like sitting on the bed, hunched over, holding her. She's facing me and I'm like holding her shoulders and she's holding on to me. And I'm like, so how long is this gonna take? Is this gonna hurt? Oh, like I just could not shut up because I was so nervous. But for some reason, my like freaking out was distracting me from my contractions. Amidst of me asking this lady a bunch of questions, the anesthesiologist tells me that I need to hunch over and relax. So I do just that. I bend over just how much as he tells me to. He tells me that my spine was bent perfectly. So the first thing he does is he gives me the numbing shot. That honestly, if I'm being 100% real, hurt way worse than the actual putting in the epidural itself. It's this little needle and they put it in your spine, wherever they put it. I don't know, I couldn't see, just could feel it. And it made my entire back burn, like so bad. It was just the worst burning feeling ever. And then after that, he stuck this pointed metal tube into my spine, and I could just feel like crunching, like I could just feel it breaking through bone and muscle and whatever it was going through. Like, I don't know. I could just feel it. It didn't hurt, but I could just feel the crunching, if that makes any sense. And I know it's really gross. But then he feeds the tubing into that tube that goes down into my spine or back or whatever. I don't really know how it works, so don't come for me. And then he takes the other tube out and he starts administering the epidural. After all that was done, they laid me back down onto my bed. My mom was able to come back into the room, and after about 10 minutes, I had no feeling anymore. I couldn't move my legs. I didn't feel any contractions. It was a breeze. I felt amazing. Little did I know that that was not going to last very long. So the epidural ended up making me really, really shaky. I like looked like I was having a seizure. It was so bad. I wasn't cold. I don't know why it makes you shaky. Look it up. I know it makes a lot of people shaky. Most definitely made me shaky. So they laid like a ton of heated blankets onto me. Again, not because I was cold, but for some reason that like relaxed my muscles enough to the point where I wasn't like shaking all over the place. After I had stopped shaking like uncontrollably, the nurses came in to put in my catheter. Shortly after getting my catheter, I was laying in bed. My aunt had gotten there a few minutes before that, and I was laying in bed talking to my aunt and my mom, and I was like, I feel like I just peed on myself. And they were like, well, there's no way you could have peed on yourself, you have a catheter in. So my aunt goes and she gets a nurse, and a nurse comes in and they're like, oh, your water broke. But it didn't break all the way, so they had to actually like take this stick thing that had like a little hook on it, put it up there, break the rest of my water, and then they like put a monitor on her head or something like that. That's all I remember them saying. After they finished breaking up my water and cleaning up the mess, the other nurses left, and there was one nurse left in the room, and she made me lay on my right side. Now, I will never in a million years understand why she did this, because I had an epidural, and epidurals are gravity based. If I am laying on my right side, the only side my epidural is going to be on is my right side. After about a few minutes of laying on my right side, I started to regain feeling completely in the left side of my body. I could feel all of my contractions. They were absolutely terrible. They were not stopping in between anymore. It literally felt like one long contraction. I could not sit still. At this point, my daughter's dad's dad was also in the room, so it was like really awkward. Like, I'm sitting there unable to sit still, moving, crying, saying I need the anesthesiologist to come back in and give me more. And it was just really awkward. So my aunt was like, maybe you should go wait in the waiting room. The anesthesiologist came back in and he put more of the epidural into my body. It helped a little bit, but not 100%. I was still feeling contractions on my left side, but they hurt like they did when I was going to the hospital. So like, they hurt, but they weren't unbearable. So I was at least okay with that. 30 minutes later, not even, probably like 20 minutes, my epidural was wearing off again. I needed the anesthesiologist to come back in and give me more of the medicine. He comes back in and he gives me more. This doctor was so irritated. Like, I'm just gonna be completely real with you. A lot of the doctors seemed like they could not have been more bothered by me being in labor. And the fact that he had to keep coming in to give me more epidural, he was just like, you just tell he was just like, oh my God. Like, stop asking me for shit. So about another 30 minutes go by and I'm like starting to feel my contractions really bad again. I'm like, nope, I need more epidural. But I had to wait because he was in the middle of giving another woman an epidural. So in the midst of me waiting for him to be done with her to come help me, I just started to feel pressure like in between my legs. And I was like, I feel like I have to poop. Like, that's what I said. I was just like, I feel like there's something there. And my aunt goes, well, you might be 10 centimeters dilated now. So she goes and gets a nurse, and a nurse comes in, and literally the minute they lift, because I couldn't move my legs, they had to lift and open my legs for me. The minute she looks down at my vagina, she's like, oh, I see hair. So Sariah was just swimming her way out of me at this point. Like, out of nowhere, like 10 more nurses burst into the room. Everybody's doing something, getting the baby bed ready, getting towels, blankets, lifting my legs up onto the stirrups. And I'm like, oh my God, it's happening. And I'm sitting there in so much pain. I was crying and I was screaming and I was looking at my mom and I'm like, I cannot do it. I cannot push at all. I literally, this is not going to happen. I can't do it. So my mom's sitting there telling me, yes, you can do it, you have to do it, so you're gonna do it, you know. And my aunt's over there on the other side. I mean, my mom was holding my right leg, my aunt was holding my left leg, but they're both telling me like, you gotta do it, you can do it. Then the nurse in front of me starts telling me to push. So I start to push and they're like, oh my God, beautiful, you're pushing perfectly. And I pushed about 3 times. I only pushed for like 5 minutes and she was already out. What's funny though is like in the middle of me pushing, I was like, oh my God, is she almost out? And the lady was like, yeah, would you like to see? Because I guess they had like a mirror in the bathroom and I was like, no, I want her the hell out of me. And the lady was like, so I pushed her out of me. Biggest relief of my freaking life. That's like taking a massive poop, okay? TMI, but the relief you feel after they come out is ridiculous. So after I pushed her out, they laid her on my chest. She was not crying and she was really dark purple. She had tons of amniotic fluid in her lungs. So they were trying to suck all of it out and patting her back and all that, and she still wasn't crying, so they took her off of me and they put her in the baby bed and they were doing their thing. In the middle of that happening, doctors were coming over to stitch me up because I had a 1st-degree tear on the bottom and a 2nd-degree tear on the inside. So there was a student doctor trying to stitch me up, and I guess she didn't know what she was doing, so an actual doctor had to come over and finish my stitches. But in the middle of that happening, I finally heard her cry. It took them a long time to get her to cry, actually. It really had me scared. And then after they had gotten her all cleaned up and all of that, they brought her over to my daughter's dad. He was sitting in the corner of the room right next to me. And after they had finished giving me my stitches, I was actually able to hold her. And that was just the greatest feeling in this entire world. I instantly, like, I had been in so much pain, and it's absolutely crazy, but all the pain that I was feeling instantly went away the minute that I was like holding her. It was crazy. Like, just to have this little person that's been inside of you for 9 months and they're finally in your arms, it was the most beautiful feeling in this entire world. Like, I don't even know how to explain it, but there's no other feeling like it. So after holding her for a few minutes and my epidural was wearing off, they told me that I needed to stand up and go pee. So a lady helped me up. My legs were all jiggly and I almost fell, and she helped me walk to the bathroom. I sat on the toilet and she held like this miniature, it's like plastic, and it was like a bowl. It was like this big, and it had ounces in it to see how much I could pee, and she was holding it under me while I peed in it, and there was just so much blood. It was just so gross, not even gonna get into it. It was just nasty. But moral of the story, I was peeing into this bowl while this lady held it under me, and I'm not joking, I swear to you, it felt like I peed for like 7 minutes straight. I was in awe at how much pee was in this bowl. So after I had finished peeing, the nurse helped me get back into my bed, and another doctor came over and they were checking all my vitals just to make sure that I was okay. Another nurse came over and she was massaging my stomach. After all of that was done and they were completely done checking me, they took Sariah to the nursery so that I could check on her and make sure that she was okay. After they had brought Sariah back from the nursery, they pushed my bed and hers out of the delivery room and like down the hall to put me into like an actual room that I would be staying in for the next 3 days. Once I had been brought into the other room, I was holding Sariah, and another nurse came in to once again check my vitals and massage my stomach just to make sure that it was all getting out and that my vitals were still okay, because my blood pressure was really high. Another nurse had came in and she was talking to me about all the baby safety things that I'm gonna need to finish, the birth certificate, all of that. She was basically just going over the forms that I'm gonna have to fill out before I leave the hospital. While she was talking to me, Sariah starts not being able to breathe, and she starts coughing and choking, and I'm freaking out and I don't know what to do. And the nurse grabs her with one hand. This looked horrible, by the way. Grabs her with one hand, starts beating her back, and like, I swear, like a whole 8 ounces of fluid just comes out all over the place. She still had more amniotic fluid in her lungs that they had not gotten out before. But after that, she was completely fine, never had any problems with it again. Everything was good. And that was pretty much it. For the next 3 days, everything was pretty chill. I was tired, obviously. Things were hard. I was adjusting to having a baby, being a mom, breastfeeding, all of that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. If you want to see more of my videos, make sure that you subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in my next one.